everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of No Bullshit Talks. I'm pleased to be joined here today by Tatiana Keay, who is a registered dietitian and an author of a couple of books, right? So you've got new book out, Hungry Truth, I believe, and you've got a food writing journal as well. So it's very exciting to have you on the show.
Thanks, Sabrina. I'm so excited to be here. It's going to be a fun conversation.
I know. I'm so excited to kind of delve into the world of dieting and everything like that, because you're actually a legit dietitian. You're registered, you're qualified, you know what you're talking about. There's a big difference. But I feel like your industry is full of supposed experts, and you just scroll through Instagram and I swear everyone's got dieting tips. Like, you'll get Facebook ads and sending you to all these pages with diet supplements and all these regimes you gotta do, and you just sign up now for only $39.99 and you never see your money again or whatever. But I mean, what do you think about the industry at the moment?
Everyone thinks they're an expert at this point, just like you said, and it's really not their fault. We just live in an information age, right, where we have knowledge at the tips of our fingers. And so it's really not their fault that they think that they're the expert. It's just we've never had this access to information in human history. And so the thing, I don't know if you've heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah, I have. Yes. Yeah. So
it's this cognitive bias that when you think you know something, your confidence is like through the roof, even when you just know a little bit. Versus the more that you actually learn, you realize you don't know anything. And so that's the case with nutrition, is these influencers and bloggers, they know a little bit. And so they are overly confident about what they do know. However, dietitians and researchers, we tend to know a little bit more. So we actually feel like we don't know crap. We feel like we don't know anything. And so our confidence is actually much lower than these people who just know a little bit. And so it's interesting, as the Dunning-Kruger effect, as time passes and you learn more, you actually start to gain a different type of confidence. It's not hollow confidence. It's actually earned confidence. And so as wisdom increases, so does your confidence. Whereas, yes, these influencers are just at the start of the Dunning-Kruger effect, and they're just overly confident. And unfortunately, it's just hollow. It's empty. And again, they don't mean bad. They do mean well, but that's just how life and knowledge works. Is the more you know, the more you realize you don't know shit.
Yeah. And I feel like I remember this when I went to medical school, and we called it the medical student effect, right? It was as soon as you start to learn a couple of things, we're like, oh my God, we're basically doctors now. And people would ask us all these questions and about medicine, and we'd be like, yeah, we know this, we totally know this. And actually all it made us do was be super paranoid about everything. Because it was you had a slight chest problem, you're like, oh my God, I'm self-diagnosing myself, I have this and I'm dying, and it's it was really stupid. But obviously we knew, in the grand scheme of things, we didn't know anything at all. But the difference is, my issue with these people is that, like you said, a lot of them obviously don't mean any harm. A lot of them are just, they maybe have learned something and they actually want to inspire other people, and they're there trying to teach people. That's absolutely fine. I get it. It's good that they want to give back. But there's also a lot of people who know they don't know anything, who are just there to rip people off. And I've spoken to some people who have been asking to be on the podcast, and their whole thing is, oh, I read this book and now I teach this book. And it was I read it a year ago and now I'm an expert in this method. And I'm like, you're not an expert in this method. I also read that book, but I'm not trying to take money off people and running courses for it. It's it was a good book, don't get me wrong, and I'm going to recommend stuff, but I think there's a difference. And so I feel in your industry, there's a lot of people who say they're experts and genuinely, go out there knowing they probably don't know that much, but they think, oh, actually, I've got a good body, I look quite nice, I'm sure a lot of people will just believe what I have to say. I am now a fitness and dietitian expert. And it's dangerous for other people who are listening to them. That's my worry. It's they can do whatever they want, but you as a professional, do you not get worried that, say if someone has genuine nutritional problems and they come to those people and they're getting the wrong advice. Like, how bad is that?
It is worrisome. And many of my patients have fallen prey to the influencers, to the misinformation online, especially in the gut health world. In digestive health, everyone thinks they know the right diet, right? And so, yes, people take the advice of the non-experts and they actually do more harm to their body. So, of course, it is worrisome. And it's hard to get around this right now because as humans, we look to the person with the perfect body, we look to the loudest person in the room, and we take their advice versus the person who actually knows the information is not going to be self-proclaiming it. They're usually the one that's humble in the background, right? So we just have to be careful, and that's up to the individual to question the people who are the loudest. And we can't really get past that unless we just question it ourselves.
But how does someone understand the difference who's not an expert in the world, right? So say if I'm just scrolling through and I want some inspiration for someone to help me lose weight, but maybe I also have some medical issues as well that's causing me problems, because I think that's another thing. It's like, it's one thing for the average healthy-ish from a medical perspective person to lose a bit of weight, but say if you have underlying medical issues that stop you eating certain things, stop you being able to exercise or whatever, like you said, it could be more detrimental to your health listening to these so-called experts. How does the average person be able to distinguish who's legit and who's not?
That is difficult. I think, honestly, and there's no research to support this, I think it all comes back to being intuitive with your truth. Because, yeah, that person might give good advice for one person. It might work and help one person, but not another. So, for example, the ketogenic diet, let's just use that as an example. For a lot of people, it works. It reverses their diabetes. It helps their weight loss. Their hormones get balanced. So it's not a bad diet in a sense, right? And there's a lot of promoters of the ketogenic diet. But for some person, it might not be helpful for them. It actually could be doing more harm based on their genetics. So I think we need to come back to intuitive truth. So if that person who does try ketogenic diet or takes the advice of whatever expert they're listening to, and they don't feel good, then they need to start asking themselves, okay, is this the diet for me? We need to take an individualized approach. And so, sure, I don't recommend buying anything off of anybody, but to take someone's advice and try it for yourself. And if it doesn't feel good or doesn't feel right, or intuitively you just don't think it's working for you, then move on, do something else. Or what I obviously would recommend is find a dietitian who's actually going to support you. Find a healthcare team that is going to take you as a whole person and treat you that way, versus just trying to figure it out on your own, which, again, we live in the information age, and we can Google a symptom and have all the possible causes as to why. Why am I getting all these headaches, or why am I getting bloating? But it's not until we actually have someone on our team to create an individualized approach that we can experience real healing, real results.
I guess I think that a lot of people probably think they can't afford that personal approach. So in the UK, we're really lucky. We have the NHS, we have doctors who can support us, we have free medical care, which is amazing. But there's still not going to be dedicated to you, right? They're not going to, they've got millions of other people that they need to look after, so understandably they're not going to be there if you need to just quickly call them, or you want to just quickly check something, where there are services like that, like what you do is really personalized for your clients and stuff like that. And I feel like not everyone's going to be able to afford that. So I guess they're going to see the person who's just advertising on Instagram or whatever, it seems affordable and cheap, and they're going to be like, okay, let's go with them. And there must be some who are okay, but like you're saying, don't buy anything. But again, there's probably some good products out there. How do you know which ones are real and which ones are not? And it must be just a minefield.
It is a minefield. And I think it's going to take us years, if not decades, to change the culture scape, to change the healthcare system. In the US, our healthcare system is really messed up, and eventually we will be able to take the personalized approach and be able to spend an hour with a patient and it not being cost an arm and a leg. So I think we're moving towards that way, especially because so many patients want that. They realize the 15-minute consult with the doctor is not enough, right? Or sometimes 30 seconds. The doctor goes in and out. So in the meantime, we have to do our best to be intuitive and practice our own wisdom, cultivate our own wisdom about our bodies, right? Not looking to the influencer, not looking to our right or to our left, but to just reflect within and ask ourselves, what has felt good in the past? Oh, sleeping felt good in the past. Maybe I should focus on that. Oh, when I drink an extra bottle of water, I feel good, versus just trying all these other crazy fads of restriction, avoiding gluten, avoiding dairy, doing all the things. Why don't we just start simple with what has already worked for you in the past?
Yeah, and like you said, every single person's body and makeup is totally different. So what works for you may be the opposite for me. It might be really bad, and I've had that totally in the past, and that's why there shouldn't be a one size diet fits all kind of thing. Like, so it's that's why I think like personalization is the only way to go. But you specialize in gut health, right? So why gut health? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, so the digestive system has always been very interesting to me. Obviously, we eat food, it goes through our digestive system. So it'd only be natural for me to be interested in it since I am interested in food. So my first year practicing as a dietitian, I started realizing, hey, I really like gut health. And for some reason, everything comes back to gut health, right? So in research, we're finding like anxiety is linked to your gut health. Cardiovascular disease is linked to your gut health. Diabetes is linked to your gut health, and so on. So all of these diseases are somehow coming back to the gut. So I thought, why not investigate this more and specialize in this area? And so that's when I ended up getting a job with a digestive clinic. I work with 4 gastroenterologists. And so ever since then, I've just loved it so much. And the best part about it is we don't know everything yet. So there's a lot of mystery. There's still so much to learn. And again, that's where that Dunning-Kruger effect comes in. Because yeah, maybe going in, I was like, oh, I know a lot. But after like the first year or two, I thought, I don't know much. Like, this is crazy. There's still so much to learn. But over time, I've learned, one condition after another. And we have to take that individualized approach.
It's so funny how you can be, like you said, that with you know a little bit and then you think you know everything. And I feel like the smartest people and the most successful people are always the ones like, I could learn something from this. And they feel like they could actually learn from anyone. Like, and it's just, I think that's when you realize that actually you've got an open mind and you could pick up so many things. And I think you can grow much quicker that way, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And the ones that, yes, think that they know everything, that are not open-minded to new ideas, like that's a red flag. If someone is like solid about their idea and like will not change, like that's when you should start questioning them, versus someone that says, hey, there's wiggle room here. Some people do really well on a high protein diet. Other people do better on a vegetarian or vegan diet. So the ones that are claiming like this is the only way, those are the ones that little red flag should go in your mind.
I always think this because I think like if you think about the world view, right, and so many people, like I remember when Atkins was a thing. I don't know if is it still a thing. I don't know, but obviously
not really.
No/low carbs has always been a thing that people say, right? And they say, oh, you shouldn't touch carbs. And there's people who don't touch any pasta, any rice, any bread. They don't eat any of that. And I think like, okay, so in Asia, rice is like a massive staple part of everyone's diet, and Asia's a very small continent, as in not as large as in the size of it, but the people are generally in great condition, and they're usually like really fit and healthy. Same as in like Italy, for example. Italians are usually in great shape. Like the Mediterranean diet's amazing, but they eat pasta all day long. So I'm sorry, but there can't be like carbs cannot be just like a toxic thing, because it just doesn't make sense. Otherwise, all the people in Asia would be fat, and all the people in Italy would be fat, but they're not.
So correct. And that's why, again, we need to come back to our individualized approach of where do your genes come from? If you come from Asia, rice is a staple in your cultural diet. Exactly. So why would you eliminate it? If you're from, the Europe why would you eliminate bread and pasta? That's a staple. So here in the US, of course, yes, we have lots of processed carbohydrates, and like that's a whole nother conversation. But yes, we need to go back to individualized approach. And what did your ancestors eat? What did your grandparents eat? You know, try to replicate that, because that's most likely what your DNA is okay with.
Yeah, well, I love the sound of that, because I'm half Chinese and half Jamaican, so like rice and like plantain and that sort of stuff is a big part of my culture, so I love that.
I love it.
But I would love to talk more about gut health, because I feel like it's become quite a topical thing, especially around like lactose intolerance. I feel like more and more people are finding this out, and I think there's more services out there that do all these kind of like blood testing, and you know, they're kind of offering this sort of approach to find out what you're allergic to or intolerant to. And I think lactose intolerance really quite high compared to what it used to be, or people are actually aware of it. Maybe they were suffering before, and just intolerance in general. And then obviously people are just sort of getting bad stomach symptoms and they don't realize what it is. Like, how much have you seen this in what you do? Like, is that a big thing? And what are usually the complaints that people come in with, and how have you helped them?
Yeah, so lactose intolerance has always been a thing. You know, 65% of the population is lactose intolerant.
That's
after
huge.
Childhood. A lot of people, and it's because, yeah, the human body naturally wasn't going to consume cow's milk, right? But most people, as long as they're consuming cow's milk regularly, their body will still produce the enzymes. It's when we go like dairy free for too long of a time that our bodies can become intolerant when they see it again. But yeah, dairy or lactose intolerance, especially in the Asian cultures, is a very high. I think it's for the Asian population, it's 85%.
Yeah.
So yeah, and again, it's not like we need to be like against all dairy. We just have to be mindful. Okay, we need to find some alternatives for you. And yeah, going to other intolerances and digestive issues with certain foods, most of those tests that are available are unfortunately not accurate. You can kind of think of them as like a horoscope, right? Like they'll tell you things and like you will be like, oh yeah, like I eat that food and I get bloated, right? Or like when you read your horoscope, you're like, oh my gosh, like that totally
it
so
totally
true.
relates to you. You read it. You can do that with so many things though. It's true. You can be like, oh my God, that is so me.
Exactly. And so with food sensitivity testing, like there are a couple legit ones. LCAS is one, and then LEAP MRT. Both of these are really good food sensitivity tests to see if your body is reacting in an immune response way. Whereas like other allergy and food sensitivity testing, like we just have to take that with a grain of salt. But part of the reason why so many people are having digestive issues right now, my theory, is the way that we're processing our food, right? So back in the day, like let's even use dairy as an example. Cows ate grass. They lived a nice life in the sunshine. They roamed the fields for all their life until it was time to, slaughter them or whatever. But nowadays we're raising cows and other animal products in one facility. They don't move their whole life. They're fed grains. They're fed antibiotics. They are fattened up so big that like their legs basically break. And if we take that milk from the farm factory produced cow versus the cow that lived a nice healthy life in the grass and in the sunshine, like don't you think the milk quality would be different between the two cows? So we have to come back to that. And that's with every food at this point. I mean, grains, even our fruits and veggies have less nutrients now than they did 100 years ago. So I think it's more so the way that we're processing our food, the reason why people are having digestive issues, along with one other thing, which we will talk into in this moment here, I'm sure. But stress is the other huge trigger, and like our mental health.
So let me talk about, we just said about the different way they're raised and everything like that. So to you, is there a big difference between organic food and non-organic food, and is it totally worth the price? Because I know that there's lots of people who think different things of this, and organic has always been kind of the the upper class food, and everyone's like, oh, I want organic, it has to be organic, but it's actually, there's not really much difference in it. But to you, do you think there's a big difference between organic food?
So unfortunately, the organic label has been tainted. So Farmers can say the food is organic, even, or like the cow is organic or the milk is organic, even if the cow only went outside for 15 minutes of its whole life. So the organic
Oh.
label has been tainted, unfortunately. So, however, there is some labeling more specifically with our animal products. With our fruits and veggies, like we can get away with getting, non-organic for the most part, like especially if we can't afford it. But when it comes to animal products, that's where, yes, we need to look for pasture raised, cage-free, grass-fed. And I don't know if it's the same labeling over there, but that's the labeling we have here.
Yeah, it's mostly that same sort of thing, free range and all that kind of stuff with the chickens and stuff like that.
Exactly. So that is definitely, I would look at that versus organic, non-organic at this point in time, just because the organic label has been tainted. But yes, to answer your question, it does matter, and it is an investment, and I know it's expensive, and that's why overall we should still be focusing on plants as like a big portion of our diet versus like, yes, these more expensive animal product foods.
That is exactly what my next question was going to be. So, obviously, so much of the internet is now pro-vegan, and I swear, like, vegans have taken over, and they're, as you said, they shout the loudest, and it's all like, and every time I've ever posted a picture of like a burger or a steak, I have all these vegans going, "You animal killer," blah blah blah, and they just start like abusing me on Instagram, and I'm just like, oh my god, I like my meat. I also adore animals. They're like, you hate animals. I was like, I adore animals. I absolutely love animals. But I eat meat. I always have done. I grew up on it, and I just don't see myself changing. I tried a vegan diet, vegetarian diet even, and I now do one veggie day a week just because I wanted to do a challenge this year, and actually it's been great, and there's some really nice veggie meals I've been having. But I miss meat in my diet, and I think, as you say about bodies, I think I need it, because when I used to do I did a veggie week before, I got really sick. So I think my body requires meat. My whole family are the same. So, but I'd like to hear from a dietitian's point of view. Now, is being vegan actually better for you, or is it just a trendy thing?
So there's a couple different answers here, but I want to go back to, you didn't feel good after doing it for a week. That is your body intuition. That is your body communicating and saying, hey, Sabrina, we don't do well on this. We do not feel good, right? So to answer your question, it depends on the person. If someone thrives on a vegan diet, wonderful. Are there nutritional deficiencies in the vegan diet? Yes. And that's like, you need a supplement, like, unless you're being like absolutely perfect, which takes too much effort for the average person. But for the most part, the vegans have one thing right, which is eating lots of plants. And overall, we do want to minimize our animal products, too much protein, especially if we're just having like a big steak and like no veggies, that can be problematic. So it comes back down to being more flexible. So yes, listening to your body and saying like, hey, like, I actually don't feel like meat today. Let me just focus on a plant-based meal, versus like if we're female on our cycle, like we're losing iron, with our cycle. So you might crave meat. You might find like, oh, I really want a burger right now. And again, that's your body communicating. If you ever, in my opinion, if you're craving meat, that's your body communicating like, hey, we need protein. Hey, we need iron. We need something found in meat. So that's where the intuitive part comes in. But for us to go full trend and full fad of I'm vegan, like, it's a label, it's a title. We're identifying with our diet, which is just unnatural. It's so unnatural. Human beings never titled their diet, right? We just try to eat to survive. It's just more recently where, we try to be popular because we're vegan, or, we try to do whatever based on a fad, follow the trend. And so we just have to be really careful with that and still come back to intuitive. Some days, like, I don't really like meat. I'm like, oh, I don't really want to have any chicken or beef, like, I'll have some eggs, or, I don't really even feel like eggs. So we have to be intuitive and flexible with our diet.
I'm so glad you said that, because I am all for people doing what they need to do, but I hate the fact that other people try to force it upon others and tell others that, like, fine, if you want to be vegan and, like you said, a vegan diet works for you, then that's great. You look fantastic. Well done. Good on you. But it doesn't mean that that's going to work for me. Like, I'm probably going to feel sick. I'm probably going to feel really sluggish and tired because I don't have the same energy that I would have had from meat. But that's just my body. It doesn't mean the same. And so it really bugs me that there are so many things out there, brands, so many people who are just like vegan, vegan, vegan. It's the only way. And like, as someone who's actually qualified in this area, do you not think it's misleading? Because a lot of these companies are pro-vegan because it's trendy. Because if you're vegan now, you're seen to be, helping the environment, pro-animals, and you're actually more popular and you gain kind of like this kudos for it as a company. And I just think that people are doing it for that popularity, not because they actually care about people. And I feel like it's misleading, because if they're saying, oh, this is better for you, but surely that's bad medical advice saying that. Like, surely if you're saying that, it's different for every person. So isn't there something that can be done, like from a food perspective, or like, the authorities to get involved and be like, right, FDA or not liking this kind of wording, surely?
I wish someone could just be like, hey, everybody, let's stop following the trends. Let's be intuitive. Let's take the individualized approach. But probably not going to happen anytime soon, because the people that are in charge, like, they're very powerful, like money hungry people, like pharmaceutical industry, very money hungry, big food industry, very money hungry. So they are going to go along with the trends. So that way they make the most money. Right. So again, it comes back down to the individual person. And of course, anyone listening to your podcast is likely an open-minded person. And so kudos to you for taking the steps to like find your own knowledge, not just to believe the status quo. And it's up to the individual person to question it. If we don't question it, we'll just believe that the vegan diet is the best diet out there. When there's in fact nutritional deficiencies. Going back on your environmental, like, oh, it's better for the environment. Actually, some of those meat alternatives use more water than beef does. So in fact, it's actually not better for the environment. It's worse than a grass-fed, grass-finished beef.
I think this a lot, because I think that I've had a lot of fake meat. I've got vegan friends, and I've also, when I've been doing the veggie diet, I feel like I've been cheating because I've been doing the meat, not meat supplements, the meat, they got call them meat replacements. What do they call them? The meat alternatives?
Like meat alternatives, yeah.
Whatever the term is, fake chicken, basically. I just feel like some of the stuff is so good. Like, it's actually tasted just like the real thing. And I was thinking, this cannot be natural, eating this. Like, to make it taste so similar to chicken or duck, which I've had, I'm like, you must put a whole lot of unnatural crap in this in order to make that happen. This cannot be that healthy. I totally get people who eat, like, fresh greens and all that kind of stuff. That's lovely. Like, go make a nice salad or whatever. That's healthy. But I feel like adding then the fake processed meat or whatever it is that goes into it when you're having that stuff, that's surely bad for you.
It's processed, and the human body was never meant to eat processed foods. So this is across the board, like the foundation for a good human diet, which is whole food diet, whole food, plant-based. Now, for some people, it might mean more rice, like in Asia. For others, it might be more meat heavy, as it was in like more of the northern countries, right? So, but all of those things are whole foods. There's one ingredient in beef. There's one ingredient in rice, right? Versus, yes, you now take this fake meat, 20 plus ingredients. That's not whole food. That is something that was created in the lab, was created by the food industry, who don't have a good interest in mind. So ultimately, we need to question the foods that are very processed, even if they're deemed healthy, and come back to, okay, could I switch this out for a whole food?
I did not even realize that's why Whole Foods is called Whole Foods, but I'm guessing, is that what it is?
Yeah, so I mean the store, Whole Foods.
Yeah, well, you were saying it, I was like, oh, because Whole Foods is supposed to be really good for you. It's more expensive. It's like the trendy place to shop, but the food is really good quality. But now I'm thinking, is it called Whole Foods for that reason? Is that kind of where it started? How is that?
I think that's where they started. However, again, it's a business. Like they have plenty of products there that are processed that are not Whole Foods. But I'm sure that's where they initially started is yes, we do, good high quality vegetables, good high quality products with minimal ingredients, minimal preservatives. So I think originally maybe that's why they called themselves Whole Foods.
I love I'm just working that out now. It's good. But you made me think though, because you talked about a lot about influencers and you're saying that you wish there was people out there to kind of speak up about this. Are there any influencers out there who are doing this, who are calling out on the bullshit of those people like pro-vegan? Are there any people, because so there's a few people, for example, who are like trying to normalize women's bodies, and I think they're fantastic. Those people on Instagram, they are absolutely needed. Are there any other people who are doing that on a food front, and being like, look, guys, you can eat whatever the hell you want and still be really healthy and still have a good body. And like, here I am one day with a cake and here I am one day with a glass of wine. You don't have to have no dairy, no fat, no alcohol. It's everything in moderation, right? And it's just that sort of thing. Is there anyone out there like who we should be following that does that kind of thing?
Yeah, there's a couple dietitians that I personally follow, and I know one is very big on cultural diet, right? So, she's Asian and she eats rice. She's like, there's nothing wrong with rice, And I think it's more in like the body image world too, where people are like, oh, every body is beautiful, accept your body for what it is. But also because again, it is Instagram, it is social media. Now we have these other extremes, right? So we have the crazy dieters, but then we have these other anti-dieters who are like F diets, losing weight. Like they're just too extreme in my opinion. And it's like, you should still find balance between the two. Like you should find balance between, the vegan diet and like being anti-diet. We should find the middle ground and what works for us. And so, yeah, there are some people online that are more realistic, I guess, that do believe in moderation. And I would say for the most part, dietitians are that way, because we're all human. Like I go and like eat a burger too sometimes. Like sometimes I like to bake cookies and like some of my patients don't believe it, but like I do eat those foods because life is life and those foods can be part of a happy life. It's when we start abusing those foods and start emotionally eating, right? We come home and we're stressed. And so now we're using food to feel better. That's where the line is drawn when it comes to eating those treats. Versus, it's a wedding, you're going to have a piece of cake.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like you can't, because then the whole point of people doing this is saying it makes them happier because they look a certain way. But then if you're, removing all your favorite foods from your diet and you don't even enjoy what you're doing, then you're just removing your happiness as well. So I don't think that could be healthy. And, you're right. I've seen some of the people on there who are like the opposite, like anti-dieters, and but they are actually, some of them are overweight and some of them don't look healthy. And I feel like there is an extreme. So it's like, you could be healthy and maybe a little bit overweight, fine. But you could also, learn to have a healthier diet for your own cardiovascular system or whatever. It doesn't mean that you have to become a vegan or do all that kind of stuff. So I do think there's a balance, and I think that people are kind of doing it for the shock factor as well. And influencers also are very strange because you've got, again, some influencers who have the perfect body, which we'll come on to what that actually looks like in a minute. But, I work with a girl and she was telling me that she used to work in this amazing ice cream shop. And she saw influencers come in all the time because these ice creams look amazing. They've got loads of followers on Instagram. They'll come in, they'll do their photos, they'll take a picture with it, and they'll throw it straight in the bin. And this is like $10 for an ice cream as well. So it's like not even cheap. They'll just throw it straight in the bin. And I know this because I've seen this in restaurants, for example. They'll go out and they'll order like a big burger and they'll have their photos in front of it and they'll take it back and have a salad. And it's like, it's all so fake, but they're trying to say, oh no, we normally, and we just happen to have a body like this, like come find us at how. And it's fake. And I hate that because I just think that's fraud in a way. And it's like, again, it's like these people there talking about this body that's perfect. And like you said, everyone's different, right? But you must have a lot of people coming to you who are patients and have probably seen this and been intimidated by Instagram and TikTok and whatever these days with all these influencers. And do you not think there is like, especially for, well, men and women, but you know, there was this perfect body type, and I feel like all the influencers now seem to have the same body type. It's not like you said, there are people disrupting it who are saying everyone's beautiful, but there is definitely a big trend of you have to get this exact same body type. And I've seen horrific behind the scenes images where they're putting cushions down the bums to get it bigger, and like, you know, and it's just, I just, it makes me so sad that that's what it's come to. But you must see that all the time, like patients complaining about this stuff.
Well, it's not even that they complain about it. They just come in and I can tell they're distraught that they don't look like that they're doing everything they can and they still don't look like that, or that they hate their own bodies because they're, you know, 10 or 20 pounds overweight. You know, it's very sad. And I wouldn't say they come out and straight complain about it, but I see it in their faces and I see it in their actions. Because when you feel bad about your own body, you're not going to respect it, right? You're going to binge eat. You're going to eat the junk food because it's like, well, screw this. You know, I'm never going to look like that. And so it is really sad and it hurts my heart. And it's like, even back in the day, like Hollywood and magazines did this, right? Like, I don't know, back in the day, like we would see a magazine and a model's on it, it has a perfect body. And then we realized, oh, they're just airbrushed, right? That photo is edited to the extreme. And then, yes, even with influencers, we're seeing like, they're kind of fake too. You know, they're, like you said, they're getting the ice cream and then throwing it out. They're not actually eating it. And you also have to think, people that are beautiful, like, let's just appreciate the 10 out of 10 beautiful women out there. Mm-hmm. Number one, most of them have enhanced beauty, right? They have extensions. They have the eyelash extensions. You know, they have the Botox, you know, and some even go as far as like the plastic surgery. Like, majority of celebrities like have plastic surgery. So it's like, we have to give ourselves a break. Like, if we don't have the money to invest in our beauty in that way, right? And just remember, like, most of those people do spend a ton of money enhancing their beauty. And so it is, in a way, fake. And I'm more of like the natural approach. Like, I don't want to do anything to my body that is unnatural. And like, by all means, like, if you love Botox, like, go for it, girl, like, you do you. But like, we just have to remember, like, as a normal human being, like, many people spend a lot of money to look more beautiful.
I remember seeing an article a few years ago which made me feel better, because I think it was like showing Beyonce, and it was like showing her outfit and how much it actually cost. And like, her outfit basically cost like 85 grand, because they took like the amount of money she spent on plastic surgery or like hair extensions and all that kind of stuff, and it came to like 85 grand. And I was like, yeah, I'm never going to be spending that much money on like one look. And so it's like, I'm fine, I'm okay. And it made me feel a lot better that it was so out of reach. But I think you made me start thinking again, because you said about stress, and I was just thinking we're going to come back to that. I was like, I do want to talk about that, because I feel like, especially a lot of people listening who are going to be busy small business owners and entrepreneurs, there's a lot of stress in that in that lifestyle, and there's a lot of stuff out there talking about how to reduce stress. But everything you just said to me makes me feel more stressed, thinking about, like, you know, you're scrolling through Instagram, comparing yourself to all these perfect women, and it makes you more stressed, like you said, and then you're gonna start binge eating, and then you're gonna be depressed because you look in the mirror and you see some, like, you know, love handles or whatever, or cellulite, or something that makes you unhappy, and then you eat more because of it. It's a vicious cycle. And then you get stressed because you don't fit into your clothes, and then you feel more demoralized, and you already have that on top of everything else going on in your life. So it's got to be really, really bad for you. And you know, you said about the stressful being another big factor, so I would definitely want to hear more about that, because, you know, I've heard so many things, and stress can cause so many problems. Like, that's the other thing, is that it affects every part of the body. But how do you realize when, you know, stress is perhaps affecting your gut or something like that? What are the signs, and how do we know when that's happening, and how do we stop it, basically?
Right. So, number one, if you're having a symptom, a digestive symptom, I would always come back to your emotional well-being. So whether it's even like a stomach ache, whether it's diarrhea or constipation, like that is your body telling you something. That's the only way your body can communicate and get your attention of like, hey, take care of me, right? We're under a lot of stress, or we're under depression, or whatever the trigger is, what emotional trigger it is. And for most times with digestive issues, it is stress, especially with stomach aches, like stress and go, go, go personality. That is the biggest thing, biggest cause to the stomach aches, right? And so, yes, we need to take back. And the first step is always becoming aware. Okay, I'm aware that my body is going through this symptom. It's trying to communicate something. What is it trying to say? And asking yourself, again, body wisdom, what is it trying to say? And we might find, okay, yeah, I guess I'm a little stressed about work, right? And keep digging of like what other stressors there are. We can't change the brain unless we become aware of what is hurting us, what is stressing us out. And so if that means, yeah, social media is causing stress because when you scroll, you see all these perfect bodies, and then you look in the mirror and see your cellulite and you're like, well, crap, like I don't look like that, and it causes more stress, then maybe that means going on a social media hiatus or taking a detox from social media is a good idea, right? Or if that means meditating on self-love, maybe we can add that into our practice. So we need to find these little practices in order to manage the stress, especially if it has to do with the outer world, right? Whether it has to do with us comparing, whether it has to do with us overworking, right? We have to come back and ask, what does my body need right now? Does it need quiet? Does it need a break from the comparison? So that way we can actually heal the body and make lifelong changes.
I think that's so nice to hear. And I think, I think everyone tries to reduce stress from their life, but doesn't always manage to do so successfully. And I think that, lots of people have had stomach problems in the past. And I'd be curious to know what you think as well about, people being diagnosed with IBS, because I feel like I know from I got a family of doctors, like I said, that's a pet peeve of theirs, is the fact that it's a diagnosis by omission, basically. It's like when someone doesn't know what the problem is and they're like, okay, so it's not that, you totally have IBS. It's like you can't even test for it. So how can you definitively say someone has IBS? And then I hear so many people going, oh, I have IBS, this and this, and they become like the little IBS club and they moan about it and it becomes a thing. But like you're saying, if you keep exploring and you keep testing, like eliminating things on the diet, see what happens, makes it better, eliminating stress, then at least you're actually making progress and actually improving things. But if you're not, you're just ignoring it and say, oh, you've got IBS, there's nothing you can really do about it, surely that causes problems in itself. I want to know what your opinion is on the IBS like diagnosis.
Okay, so IBS is interesting. And like you said, the diagnosis is made when all other testing is inconclusive. The endoscopy is negative, the colonoscopy is negative, all the testing is negative. And so doctors will just put on this IBS stamp on a person. And yeah, some people start to identify with it. They create clubs and they're like, we have IBS. IBS is just the worst. But what I find with my patients who have quote unquote IBS is if we can change both the diet and their mental health, and we see improvements, then yeah, what they do have is technically irritable bowel. Because the nervous system is so deeply connected to the digestive system, we can impact our gut with our emotional well-being, and our gut can impact our mental health. And so if we can take care of the mental health aspect, that alone can actually resolve IBS symptoms. It's just a lot of hard work to like go through, past traumas or whatever it is. A lot of IBS I have found personally with my experience linked to a trauma in the past or a really bad food poisoning bout. And what's interesting over the last 2 years is we've been finding a new condition, what a lot of people were thinking was their IBS. And it's actually SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And I don't know if you've heard about it, but I see so many patients now that thought they had IBS when in reality they had SIBO. And again, this is usually due to like a previous food poisoning bout or some type of trauma or, surgery. And so now we know actually how to treat these SIBO patients, although it's not easy. I'd rather deal with IBS than SIBO. But we're finding that we know how to actually treat these patients. And again, it is through diet, it is through lifestyle. And number one, I think, in my opinion, is their mental health, their emotional well-being.
That's so crazy that you're saying how much, and it's totally true. And that's why I think people are more aware of mental health at the moment. But again, I think that's the trend, that's the fad of people going, oh, mental health, it's a big thing at the moment, but they don't understand how it connects to, your body so much. And it's so impressive to hear that actually, if someone is out there now feeling that stomach pains and it's the same as when people are nervous, they get that feeling in their stomach, right? And that's a normal thing. But look how the mental the brain status at the time can affect your body so much, and it totally does affect it. So I guess what your advice would be if someone's got these symptoms and they maybe haven't been diagnosed, or they've tried some diagnostic tests and it's all come back negative and they've got supposed IBS, then work on the mental health and eliminate a few things and see what happens. Because I guess then, it's only going to help you in the grand scheme of things anyway. So what harm can it do? Because when you get an IBS diagnosis, they say, that's it, you can't do anything anyway. So surely this stuff must be better than nothing.
Right. To work on the mental health aspect is easiest, right? Versus like there's so many diets out there for IBS. Again, I just recommend like the whole food, plant-based approach. Although there are some like diets for IBS, like the low FODMAP diet. There's some other diets out there, but ultimately, like those, you should be under medical supervision. You should be working with a dietitian for the elimination diets, because the thing that I've seen, which is probably the most concerning thing that I see, is patients will eliminate until they're eating like 5 foods. Like they're eating like zucchini and tilapia. And it scares me, because these patients are just doing this elimination on their own. And now they're missing a lot of nutrients that they were originally getting. And although those foods like did make them feel bad, that's not the way you treat IBS. That's not the way you treat digestive issues. So doing any type of elimination diet, we need to be very cautious, because it can get almost addicting to just keep eliminating. And that fear gets very strong. The fear of, if I eat that food, I'm going to be sick, right? And so patients stay away from it. They have a fear. And so when they do eat that food in the future, the mind is so powerful, they do feel sick. It's the placebo effect, but the opposite, where you eat the food, you think it's going to make you sick, and it does. And so we have to be very careful with elimination diets. So for the general person who has digestive issues, focus on the mental health, and then focus on just doing more of a whole food, plant-based diet, less processed food, and see what happens.
How many of the people that you see actually have like eating disorders because of all of this stuff that's going on? Like, I feel like, there's so much obsession with diet and eating right. How many of them end up with eating disorders?
Yeah. So luckily, I catch a lot of my digestive issue patients before the eating disorder like actually grows into something problematic. Again, because that fear of food hurting them, like, it's almost like a trauma. Whereas like the eating disorder world of like young girls having eating disorders, like 2 of my best friends actually work with eating disorders. So that's more their specialty. Although like, obviously I'm very well versed with the eating disorder problem that is growing. It's growing. So a couple of my patients have a history of eating disorder, and it's a rough diagnosis, and it's usually due to trauma, previous trauma. But also, we have to not forget the culture we live in, the social media again surrounding us, the grandparents who are old school saying, hey, you look fat, right? Like, of course, that's going to trigger a young teenage girl who just went through puberty and just started gaining some fat on her body. So it's an issue, but I think over time, again, now that we're starting to talk about it, we can start progressing and moving forward. But you can't help anyone that doesn't want to be helped.
That's the problem though, right? Because, I think everyone's probably knows someone with some sort of eating disorder, and how do you help them? Because you want to help them. You're saying that they can't be helped unless they want to be helped, but you can't just sit back and do nothing. You want to do something. So what is there for us to do to help these people? Because I feel like, loads of people say, oh, stay off Instagram, like honestly, like it's so bad for you, mute these people, but they don't do it. They still aspire to be these so-called influencers, and they don't get that how much of their life is fake, how much of their stuff has been run through the body app, for example, and then given themselves all these fake abs and whatever, buttocks and all this kind of stuff, and they don't get it. And they're not going to listen to reason at this point. Like, how do you help those people who with eating disorders? Because I know that everyone who knows someone is going to want to help them.
Right. And I mean, there's different levels of the severity of the eating disorder. Obviously, those who are so sick that they've completely damaged their body or need to get hospitalized, like they're on a different level of, treatment, right? Versus like the person who doesn't have any issues, but just has more disordered eating. Those are the friends and family members that we just have to love them for who they are. Because a lot of people do these things because they don't have that. They don't have the love and belonging. They don't feel good enough. And so for us to just create a sacred place for them and say like, hey, I see you. You're beautiful just the way you are. And like, I know the person like on Instagram is beautiful, but like you are too. And seeing them for who they really are. I think that's how we can heal like our inner circle. Right. But then there's like people on the outer skirts who they need that too from their inner circle.
Yeah.
But I believe in the ripple effects. Like if we can like slowly love and heal one person, that person will go off and do the same.
That's so nice. I wish everyone thought like that, because I think there's still a lot of people out there who just enjoy bringing down other people, and that's the problem. And unfortunately those people exist. And so I guess the last thing I want to ask, I guess, is for a bit of advice for all the women out there. Like, I feel bad neglecting the fact that men obviously have problems with diets and eating disorders and stuff. And actually, you can say accidentally the wrong thing to a guy, and they also end up with these problems. But I feel like maybe being a woman, I'm more connected with that because I hear all my friends talking about it. But men totally obviously have the same sort of thing. They're scrolling through Instagram and they're seeing all these men with six packs and perfect like thighs and big biceps, and they're just like, oh my god, why haven't I got that? So my bad for pretending that men don't have eating problems when they do. But I want to, I guess, speak to the women, just because we're both women, probably more connected with how that feels and the negativities that we see on a daily basis. Like, what women would you give to the average Jane? And I don't mean that average in terms of, like you saying, every woman is beautiful. Like, by me saying you're average, I'm not saying that you're average looking, average, none of that. I just mean the normal everyday person who's not an influencer or a multimillionaire who can afford all this sort of stuff. The just a general regular person who scrolls through, who maybe lacks a little bit of self-confidence from time to time, who, just wants to get into a better shape, or drop a dress size because they've got a cool event to go to, or a holiday to go to. And how do you stay sane on the likes of TikTok and Instagram? Yes, okay, we could mute them. Maybe that is the right way to go. But what if, how do we, I think we should be able to survive with that. I think there needs to be a way that we can have the willpower to still look at these people and appreciate that you look great, but, and then what advice would you give to the women out there who maybe feel a little bit down sometimes and want to do something better to improve themselves?
Yeah, and that's a hard question to answer, but ultimately it comes down to understanding the truth about the female body. Again, sorry, men, like your body definitely is different here, but the female body goes through many changes throughout life. And so depending on where you are in life, you have to remember, like, you got to give yourself grace first and foremost, right? If you're 50 years old trying to have a 20-year-old body, following a 20-year-old influencer, we got to go back to the truth. Number one, the female body goes through puberty in high school, right? You start to gain more fat. You're like, oh, well, I have boobs now, I have a butt now, and then in our 20s, especially later 20s, again, our body starts to get more fat. Again, natural process. And then when we get pregnant and have babies, our body goes through yet another shift. And each decade is different for the female body, all the way up until, menopause. So we have to first and foremost come back to that truth. What part of the female lifeline or, timeline are you on? And giving yourself a little grace for that. So for the woman who, yes, has her small business and like 3 children, give yourself some grace for having a little bit of fat and some curves. If anything, love those curves because you got 3 little baby humans out of it, right? So I told my sister-in-law, she was trying to diet and whatnot and lose weight. And there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. It was just the way she was going about it and the fact that she was hating her body. And I said, look at your 2 beautiful girls. Look at them. You created those human bodies with your own body, right? And so we have to come back to that truth of the human body is going to change, and that's okay. We have to accept it first, and then now we can make changes out of self-respect instead of shame. I think a lot of people right now, again, because of social media, we change because we don't feel good enough. It's inadequacy. With shame, it's oh, if only I was like that, then I would be happy. When in reality, we should say, hey, I'm good. I'm good the way I am right now. And then we make changes out of self-respect and out of self-love.
Yeah, I wish that everyone could think like that. That'd be so nice. It'd be so beautiful if I feel like women weren't threatened, but they are, and it's sad. But hopefully, like I said, if other women pick them up all the time and support them, then it'll be so much easier. But how much of this is in your new book then? So you've got the new books coming out, and so tell me how much of what we talked about is in that.
Yeah, so majority of what we talked about, or I guess some points, like the body image issue, the feeling the need to be skinny, the feeling the need to go vegan, like most of those topics are in the book, along with a lot more controversies. Obviously, like I'm similar to you, Sabrina, in the sense of like, I want to know the truth, like screw like all the fake stuff, right? And so that's what I ended up doing with this book with nutrition and all of the different lies we've been told or have been indoctrinated to believe. And so I go through and debunk quite a few of those. And so I know for our listeners, I'd like to give them the first chapter so that way they can see.
Amazing.
It's not their fault. That's what the first chapter is about. It's not your fault. And then from there, once we accept like, hey, it's not my fault, but it is my choice, then we can move on and make a real lifelong behavior changes.
That's brilliant. I love that. And I think that, I'm going to put a link to the book in the first chapter of the book, and obviously where you can get the whole book if you love it, in the show notes and everything like that. And where can our listeners get in touch with you if they have some more questions?
Yeah, so Instagram, again, I know we're talking about like getting rid of Instagram. But Instagram is probably the best way, especially like if you're looking for people who are not going to tell you to eat a certain way. My Instagram handle is vitamin K RD, and K is spelled Keay. And on there, I do try to promote other like dietitians that are doing have the same message. And honestly, like unfollow the people that trigger you. Like I have to do that now, especially over the last 2 years. I did get off social media for about 18 months for my own mental health. But now that I'm on, anytime someone triggers me, I unfollow them because I'm on there to do good. And if I'm feeling bad going on Instagram, I don't want, that's not productive. So, but yeah, follow me on Instagram. I feel like I do a pretty good job of staying in the middle ground.
Good. I mean, I totally agree with that. I totally unfollow people who I don't get on with. Now I mainly just follow dogs. So
Yeah.
they bring happy vibes and they don't seem to offend. So that's my Instagram. But thank you so much. I think there's been some amazing topics we talked about today, some great advice, and I will make sure I put all the contact details in the show notes, and I'm sure people will have lots of conversations with you going forward. But thank you for being on today's show.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And I'm so glad we have these more controversial conversation about everything we talked about, because ultimately it's up to you, the listener, to question what you've been told and make the change. Start with yourself, and then we can slowly heal the world.
And that's exactly what the point of this show is. No bullshit on this talk show. And, you know, hopefully more people will come on the podcast and be honest like you and highlight what the industry is really like. So thank you so much. And thanks to everyone who's tuned in. And I will see everyone next week for a new episode of No Bullshit Talks.